Hello and welcome to Mr. Dude Mancer. Today I am going to be reviewing, I think, 5 cards from the latest Hearthstone expansion. And I'm going to be reviewing them as if you've never heard anything about the current expansion. So I'm going to give you all the information you need. So the expansion is Knights of the Frozen Throne. It is based on Lich King and Arthas and stuff like that. I haven't played very much WoW, other than to get to level 20 to get Liadrin. But apparently the story is you go kill Arthas with the 9 main heroes that you play in Hearthstone, and you win. However, in Hearthstone currently, the story of the expansion is that you all lose and you all turn into Deathstalkers, or Death Knights. But anyways, because of all of us dying and turning into Death Knights, we each have this hero card now. As like the last expansion, I believe we're each going to get 2 legendary cards for each class, 1 hero card, which is this thing in front of you right now, and 1 regular legendary minion. So, hero cards replace your hero. However, unlike Jiraxis where they set your health total to something, it keeps your health total exactly the same. You're kind of exactly the same hero, but you gain armor. And you replace your hero power as well. So, for 6 mana, this Deathstalker Rexar, which means it's only in Hunter. Keep in mind that it's only for Hunter. You have a 6 mana Consecration, gain 5 armor, so it's kind of like Blizzard. So you're paying 6 mana for a Blizzard. And you get a new hero power, which is Build a Beast. And it says Craft a Custom Zombeast. Now keep in mind, before I even say anything about what this hero power does, you're losing your 2 damage hero power in a Hunter after you've already paid 6 mana to kind of do nothing in the face way. So that's already bad. However, if for some reason Control Hunter were a thing, what Build a Beast does is you discover 2 beasts that are Hunter or neutral that cost 5 mana or less. Then you combine their mana costs together, you combine their stats, and you combine their effects. Now obviously there are some very busted combos such as Stone Tusk Boar and basically like any beast in the game. However, whether that will suffice for the loss of your 2 damage hero power and turn 6 where you could have played Savannah Highmane, I am not sure. So, saying that this hero power is nearly as good as Jiraxis, which I'm not really so sure, because you have to pay generally more mana, because for less effect, I'd say, as Jiraxis, and you don't get a weapon to constantly get the clearing. I'm not sure if this is enough value to pull over Control Hunter. If only you could have 2 hero powers so that you can craft a custom Zombeast to then, Dinomancy it? But alas, that is not the case. I am pretty sure that this card will see experimentation, and then, as every other Control Hunter card has happened to be, this card will be 400 dust. Now, the next card shows a new keyword, similar to how heroes are a new kind of keyword. Lifesteal is a thing. Lifesteal is in a lot of games, namely like Elder Scrolls Legends if you played it, and I'm pretty sure it's also a Magic the Gathering, but I haven't played much Magic the Gathering aside from Pauper decks, which are like $2. Alright, so Lifesteal, basically, I assume they will change, Wickerflame Burn Bristle to just have Lifesteal. 3 mana 2/2 taunt Lifesteal, and if that doesn't describe what this does very well, basically whenever this deals damage you heal that much. So if you use this for 4 mana, 3/2, so this effect better be around 2 mana. So given that a Wolf Rider is 3 mana, a 3 mana 3/2 charge would probably see play. So this body is with charge is probably worth around 3 mana. Is Lifesteal worth about 1? So we compared this to True Silver, where True Silver is kind of like 4 mana, like 2 4/2s with charge, because it's a weapon and it heals you and you get attacked right away and then you get attacked the next turn. This kind of like the 4 mana 3/2 dude Chillblade heals more. Obviously, it generally will heal you for 6, so it'll be a Holy Light on top of what I already said was a 3 mana static body. However, the tempo loss that you use here is incredibly so, and you'd most likely rather just run True Silver, as generally True Silver is your only comeback card, and if you don't have it at the time that you need it on turn 4, you generally get run over, unless you have like Pyro Quality and a bunch of other consecrations and stuff that try to stay alive, and then probably still die against aggro. So I, again, rate this card kind of crappy. Now, Spirit Lash is one of those cards that, for some reason, people think will suck. Again, it has Lifesteal, so any damage it does, even if it has spell damage, it will heal you for. People have been comparing this to Whirlwind a lot, which is the case. And they also said it is bad in Priest because you will be damaging your own minions, so you can't compare it to Maelstrom Portal. However, I disagree and say you could compare it to Maelstrom Portal, very much so. Because generally, as a Priest, you're not going to have that many minions on the board, and if you do happen to have a lot of minions on the board, they will most likely have high health. And when that is the case, and you have multiple minions on the board that have high health, you're probably going to win an aggro matchup anyways, unless you die to face damage. And having those extra minions on the board, say you have 2 high health minions, will gain you 2 extra life with this card. Unlike stuff such as Binding Heal, Spirit Lash does something immediately. It has a fast effect, binded with healing. There are a lot of 1/2 minions out there, and a lot of 1 health minions out there, with Token Druid, Token Shaman. So if you have multiple cards that could deal 1 damage, such as Potion of Madness, then you could Potion of Madness Spirit Lash and heal for a ton while clearing the opponent's board. Currently, I think this card is okay. I think if I were to rate it on 1 to 5 stars, it would be a 3-star currently. But if there is a single spell damage high health minion in Priest that gets released, or just like a 3 mana spell damage in neutral that won't die to 2 damage, this card will be probably staple in every single control or dragon priest. Because the moment you spell damage a 1 damage effect and it becomes 2, as you've probably learned against Shaman by now, it becomes busted. Bundle that with healing for each damage you deal, and the tempo swing and healing swing is just off the charts. So we have a Death Rattle card here that gives you another Death Rattle. His name is Shallow Gravedigger. Actually, it's a she, it looks like. So her name. So the first comparison, given that it's a 3 mana card that kind of counts 2 for the quest, is Stonehill Defender. Stonehill Defender is currently one of the most busted cards that was released from the last expansion. It is seeing play in a lot of decks. Taunt Warrior, it's basically being carried by this card. It's in Shaman. It's in every single Paladin deck in the existence of Paladin, except maybe like the hyper-aggressive ones. However, there is a gigantic difference between Shallow Gravedigger and Stonehill Defender. The main one is that you don't get to discover it. There are a lot of bad taunts, and if you weren't able to discover a taunt and instead got a random one, the card would probably not see nearly as much play. There are 2 reasons for why Discovery is actually incredibly better than adding a random Death Rattle to your hand. 1, there are some pretty good Priest Death Rattles, and I assume that they'll be getting more. So the reason the Stonehill Defender was so good is because the Discovery increases the chance of getting a class card of that type. So you always get Tyrion, you always get, Sunkeeper, you always get some sort of class card most of the time. However, with Shallow Gravedigger, you will get a neutral, sucky Death Rattle a lot of the time. So now that I've gone over how bad a random Death Rattle is compared to Discovery, I am going to say that this card will only see play possibly in Priest, and here's the reason why. and I'm sure you already know it. It's the quest. Now, similar to how Stonehill Defender counts as 2 taunts for the quest out of 7, this card will count as 2 for the quest. Now, priests generally struggle with card draw to the point to where if they were to try to get all the death rattles out in the time needed, they'd have to run basically every single death rattle and try to do the whole pyro Northshire priest circle healing stuff to destroy your entire deck. However, Shallow Gravedigger does its job, specifically draws you a quest card all the time, doesn't have to draw from your deck, so in the control matchups you don't go to fatigue faster, and the only downside is that it has 1 health and that it's a random death rattle minion. So, if priests get more death rattles, and there are more really good neutral death rattles that come out, which I assume, given the theme of the expansion, is a bunch of death knights, this card will start being really good and maybe make Quest Priest actually viable. However, until then, I am going to say that this card is somewhere around the bottom, but not all the way at the bottom. It's somewhere in the middle. Like, if I were to give it a 1 to 5 star, it would probably be 2. Now, out of all 5 of the cards that have been revealed, Prince Calset is probably the one that struck the most discussion. It's basically a Reno effect, but you have to have no 2-cost cards instead of having no duplicates. Now, no 2-cost cards other than this one is actually an insane requirement. Now, before I get into anything about this card, I'm gonna go over the reasons that would make this card good. So first of all, you need a deck that could benefit from the +1/+1 effects. A control-heavy spell deck would not benefit from this card, even if it didn't run any 2-mana removal. And the second requirement is you need to already not have any staple 2-cost cards that you wouldn't mind removing. So off the bat, Rogue is out of this equation, though they do attempt to play somewhat of a zoo game. They have a lot of spells. They have a lot of staple 2-cost spells such as Eviscerate, sometimes Sap, the Razor Petal Lash. And in Quest Rogue, this effect does nothing, right? Also, Warrior has Fiery War Axe, so they are not going to cut their Fiery War Axe for such a Prince Calset. Druid is the only one of the few classes that I can see Prince Calset working. That and Hunter, but I'll get to that later. So, there are a few 2-drops that Druid likes to run. One of them is Mark of Yisharaj. The other is Power of the Wild. Mark of Yisharaj is actually, I'd say, cuttable. However, the other one is Power of the Wild. And sure, they have Mark of the Lotus. And sure, Prince Calset is kind of like a Power of the Wild that is all the time. However, you don't always draw Prince Calset because you're replacing 2 Power of the Wilds for 1 Prince Calset. And 2, having as many +1/+1 effects as possible is the best. Not only that, but one of the main things after a Druid loses the first early game push is Living Mana. And this does nothing to Living Mana. It's all minions in your deck, and Living Mana is a spell, so you'll still have to have a full board of 2/2s. And that's kind of your only comeback mechanic, right? It seems like it would fit perfectly in Quest Hunter. The reason is because you can actually fill your deck with 1-drops that have an effect that you would be proud of. So generally, when you filled your deck with 1-drops, you realize soon that your deck sucks, and you don't really want to play this deck anymore, and you kind of want to kill yourself. Now, if you end up drawing Prince Calset in the top half of your deck, or hopefully on turn 2, you can summon a bunch of 1-cost minions, fill your quest, and then you will also get 1-drops that act as 2-drops in effectiveness. Given you have to start dropping Crackling Razor Maw, which is one of the biggest 2-drops in Hunter. They're actually being carried by that card. However, if you were to try to make Quest Hunter work, Prince Calset would probably be the way to go. As an honorable mention, one of my first thoughts with Prince Calset was Handlock, and the reason is because you don't usually want to run that many 2-drops in Handlock. Like, sure, you can run Doomsayer, but you could also remove it. then maybe you'll buff your minions and you can actually have some good early game. But that will rely hardcore on whether we get like another Imp Gang boss. Because in the old hand lock, or like Reno lock, if we could actually play Prince Calset and then get like an Imp Gang boss to be 3/5 and like your Twilight Drake to be +1/+1 and then a bunch of other stuff, that would actually be pretty good, I think. This has been the first 5 card review of Hearthstone. I will review them as the time goes on. However, we don't seem to get more cards until July 24th, so sad days are upon us. But when that day happens, I assume they'll have a batch release, and I will make sure to be on top of my game for them. Until then, thank you for watching, and goodbye.